Last week, for 3 consecutive days, Thursday, Friday, yesterday, Saturday, we had 3 separate funerals. It was only last week, Sunday, one of our parishioners, Ida, greeted some of us, and then Monday morning, the call came in. Ida had died in her sleep. Beloved, life is precious. And we just never know, do we? We hear it so many times, over and over, that life is unpredictable. One moment you're here, or your loved one, the next moment you or your loved one will be called to the afterlife. And so as we continue to ponder the meaning of life, and as we continue our faith journey, one thing is always true, that whether it's the coffin or the urn, all that we ever see is either the body or the remains. Which then begs the question, where do I spend most of my energy? Yes, I do have to work hard and get what I need to pay my bills and look after my family, make sure the company or the organization is doing well. But beloved, when death comes, we've heard it, we've seen it, we know it only too well, that you can't take anything at all that you have spent so much energy gaining and acquiring. In the Gospel of Luke, we hear from Jesus, be careful. You can't serve 2 masters. You can't say you serve God and mammon, or money, or wealth. In other words, beloved, Jesus issues the severe warning, do what you can. Do all that you can to make your life and your family and your company do well, but be careful. If all that energy expended robs you of time with your God, then something is wrong. As he plainly says, you will pay more attention to one and sometimes hate, despise, or distance yourself from the other. The Gospel of Luke, which we heard this morning, has its own particular emphasis. All 4 Gospels have some similar stories, but each Gospel writer has his own emphasis. Luke tends to focus on the poor. In the Gospel of Matthew, the Beatitudes, Matthew writes, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." But what does Luke put on the lips of Jesus? Luke says, "Blessed are the poor." Blessed are the poor. He, being a physician, would be fully conscious of the needs of the people that he served. And so, beloved, as we continue our journey, recognizing that life is brittle, life sometimes can be too short, we're all challenged to get our priorities in order. And so this morning I thought we'd once again remind ourselves of the 3 aspects of poverty: the financial, the intellectual, and the spiritual, that we all need to pay attention to. First, the financial. People tend to be poor/deprived for various reasons. Sometimes they don't do the work that is necessary, or the work they do is so shabby no one wants to hire him or her or them. Sometimes the address that someone lives in and then puts that on the form prevents that person and that group or family from advancing. Sometimes structures and events happen in life that one's company and one's fortunes go down the drain. For various reasons, we all have to live with poverty. Jesus himself said, the poor you will always have. But beloved, Jesus also shows something very important. He reminds those who are not so poor that we all have to be careful. First of all, whatever we have should be considered as blessings from God. God loves, and therefore God blesses. And to whom much is given, what? Much is expected. So when God blesses some of us with all that we need and more, God is saying, do you recognize that you are now called to be my face, my hand, especially to those who are financially poor? Yes, I understand in Jamaica sometimes you have to work with or against the jinnahs, always having some sob story. But what do I always remind you? You can never go wrong doing good. You can never go wrong doing good. When someone is in need comes into your presence, St. Vincent de Paul reminds us that this beggar, this deprived person, is Jesus speaking to us. And Jesus said, whatever you do to the least of these, you do to me. And every single one of us is challenged. This person is in need. How will I respond? For most of us, it will be a prayer, thank God, because we are a people of faith. But when, beloved, when we begin to think, if I give you, what will I have for myself? Danger. Because that's when what we have is becoming our master. When I begin to think the person to my left, the person to my right, the person in front of me or behind me will give, therefore I don't have to give, be careful. Because that is when you are becoming possessed by your possessions. You cannot have two masters. And the only way not to allow what we have to be our master is to simply share or give it away. In fact, the best form of giving is giving to those who can never repay you. And we are reminded that anyone who is in need, once we address that need as best as we can, within our own means and with our own prayer and discernment, we can then become the hand and the face of a generous God who has blessed each of us with what we need. And so, beloved, as we continue the journey, I must say thank you. Last week I sprung on you a second collection for the victims in the Bahamas, the hurricane victims, and this week we'll once again take up a second collection. Whatever you can give, God bless you. If you didn't come with anything, say a prayer. But we are encouraged that I understand Sandals Foundation has said whatever we give, they're willing to match. So whatever you can give, God bless you. Because when we give to the poor, we are becoming God to and for them. The second aspect of poverty, intellectual. Every child growing up is somewhat intellectually impoverished. That's why we send children to school and hopefully bring them to Sunday school. Every child then is asked to grow from the wealth of the knowledge of their teachers. Any child who believes he or she knows more than the teacher will miss some very important lessons and perhaps will never be as refined as one should be in one's discipline. But the same thing is true of pastors, beloved. Every pastor is given the responsibility, because of the wealth of training he or she in some churches may have, to share with the congregation what the church teaches and expects. For us Roman Catholics, every priest has the responsibility of sharing what is expected of us as Roman Catholics. And that is true how we approach liturgy and life. Therefore, beloved, if we understand that all of us are in need of knowledge, and we have to look to people whom God chooses and calls to teach, hopefully we become better when we learn. Here's something I'm begging parents, godparents, grandparents, and guardians to be conscious of. Be conscious of what your child or children may be or are being taught in schools. There are some who believe that they can impart particular types of knowledge to very young children because that is the way of education. But what are we seeing? Some bits of information, these bits are creating confusion. And if parents are not careful, our children are being confused with two issues. One, who am I? That which many of us took for granted growing up is now being called into question. And if parents are not paying attention and speaking with your children and sharing with them your wealth of experience and information and knowledge, chances are your impoverished child may be gaining wealth from another source, which may very well cause confusion. The second point of confusion is based on the bits of information. Your child or children may now wonder, what is marriage? Beloved, I make no judgment on anyone. I am under judgment myself. But you, my dear parents, have to be more alert. You have that wealth of experience and information. You have that wealth of knowing what life is and the dangers and pitfalls that happen along the journey of life. And therefore I beg of you, where the intellect is concerned, especially for your child or children, find the time. Make the time. Share with your children. Speak with them. Give them age-appropriate information, although that now is becoming questionable. Infants are now teaching adults about things that only adults should know. That's the kind of world we live in. Information technology has made it so readily available that some of our children are in real danger. The third and final poverty that we all need to recognize, and this is the obvious one because we are a spiritual people, is this. All of us are impoverished and poor because we cannot save ourselves. But we worship a God who is wealthy with grace. In fact, we often say and sing, God is rich in mercy and what? Full of compassion. All of us need that mercy. All of us need that compassion. And so in our own impoverished state, this rich, wealthy God, from his plenitude pours the graces that we need for one specific purpose: to become a source of wealth, of love, of mercy, of compassion for the people in our lives. When we do that, we begin to eradicate the various forms of poverty in our world. When we begin to live like that, that is when Christianity and our faith makes not only sense, it makes a difference. For if we are not practicing that, we will simply go back to the Old Testament. An eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. Where are we in the journey of life, beloved? And how do we practice our own faith? Do we understand that sometimes we are impoverished and need the wealth of others? Or sometimes because of the blessings of our own types of wealth, we are called to alleviate poverty in and through others. May the God of life, love, and joy continue to sustain us so that in all things his glory will be attained and his kingdom be advanced. To him, beloved, be glory and praise forever and ever.